I watched Trump's address to the UN today, so you don't have to, and here's my overview. Normally right here, I'd give you the craziest thing he said, but as I go through this, you're going to realize it would have been impossible for me to pick any one thing out. So I'm just going to remind you instead, if at any point you need to pause and go touch grass, I highly recommend you do that. So just to start it off, he immediately bitches about the fact that the teleprompters aren't working. And then later in the speech, he's going to bitch again about the teleprompters not working. And he's also going to bitch that the escalator, I guess, stopped while he was on it. And he said that he would have fallen had he not been in such great shape. This whole thing's basically going to be an attack on the UN, but also on the Biden administration, because right at the beginning, he says basically every problem in the world was caused by the weakness, lawlessness, and radicalization of the previous administration. He then says that a year ago we were dead and now we're the hottest country in the world. He says gas is down, groceries are down. The only thing that's up is the stock market. And then he says that affects everybody in this room, so you should be happy. Remember, he's talking to delegates that represent pretty much every nation of the world. He again claims $17 trillion of investment into the United States. I don't even have to fact check this because on whitehouse.gov, the first thing that you see is a list of investments. You can click on that. It totals up to $8.8 trillion. He makes the claim again that no one has entered the U.S. illegally for the past 4 months, which I will just remind you is a statistical impossibility. And then he says this: if you enter illegally, you are going back to the country you came from, or even further than that. You know what that means. I really don't. He finally gave us the list of the 7 wars that he claims that he's ended, even though the leaders of many of these countries have claimed that he had little to no involvement in that, and many of these ceasefires have already been broken. The list is as follows: Cambodia and Thailand, Kosovo and Serbia, Congo and Rwanda, Pakistan, India, Israel, Iran, Ethiopia and Egypt, and Armenia and Azerbaijan. And he says that he saved millions of lives by ending these wars. He said it was terrible that he had to end these conflicts and not the UN, and says that he never even got a phone call from the UN. And then he goes in this long rant bitching about the cost of upgrading the UN building. I guess it was a contract that he wanted back in the 90s or something, and he didn't get it. And he just goes on this long bitching thing about, like, you didn't get the marble, you didn't get the mahogany, you didn't get any of this, and there were massive cost overruns, and I would have done the whole thing for a certain cost and never would have gone over, and all of that stuff. He says he never received credit for the Abraham Accords, and that also everyone is saying that he should get the Nobel Peace Prize, and then immediately starts talking about how no other country in the world could have bombed Iran like he did. He says we can't recognize Palestine as a sovereign state because that would give too much credit to Hamas, and we can never forget October 7th. And then regarding the hostages, he says he doesn't want them back 2 at a time, then 2, then 1, then 3. He just wants all 20 of them back. In a totally not pro-Russian stance, he says that the war in Ukraine should have been over in 2 or 3 days, maybe a week at the most, and that it should have been an easy conflict for Russia to just go in and do their thing. He then says, though, that had he been president, none of this would have happened. Even though he said the war would be over in 24 hours, he says that if Russia is not going to end the war, then we're going to put heavy tariffs on them. So I guess he's going to tax us, the American taxpayers, if Russia doesn't end their war, which makes total sense. And then he claims again that COVID was made in a lab overseas and then released, and then makes a heavy implication that we should just stop research on any biological pathogens or anything like that. Regarding immigration, he says the UN is funding an assault on Western cultures and their borders, and then does this pro-nationalist propaganda shit and says that basically we shouldn't allow people with other customs into our countries. And then just London wants Sharia law because their mayor wants Sharia law, I guess. Here's a direct quote with no context. "I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell." He's talking about the caravans that were coming up in 2016 to completely destroy our country that never actually arrived because they didn't exist. They were just right-wing propaganda the entire time, and says that the road is just littered with dead bodies because apparently it was so hot that people couldn't breathe and they were suffocating from the heat. Now, I don't know if you have a heat stroke and that causes respiratory failure and then you are unable to breathe because of that, if they would count that as suffocation as the cause of death or heat stroke. But to the best of my knowledge, naturally within the climates of the world, air doesn't get so hot that humans can't breathe it and therefore suffocate. At one point, he's trying to say foreign terrorist organization and he can't, so he just skips it and goes to the next line. I guess just to justify the extrajudicial killing of foreign nationals, he says that we lost 300,000 people to drug overdoses last year, which, again, that number is between 80 and 100,000, so he's at least tripling that. And he says that each boat that they blow up saves 25,000 American lives, even though he didn't prove that there were drugs on any of those boats, or that any of those, if there were, would have led to overdoses. But all of that being said, he says, we've stopped them bringing in drugs by sea. We call them water drugs. As you'll see, this is just the beginning of a long rant he's going to do on renewables, but he says renewables are a joke, they just don't work, and that the wind basically doesn't blow, and that it's so expensive and they keep breaking down and all of that. Anyways, here's a list of types of energy production which are cheaper than coal and oil. Those would be wind, solar, hydro, and geothermal, all much cheaper, and he keeps calling for nuclear, which happens to be one of the most expensive types of energy. He claims China keeps making all these wind turbines, but they refuse to put up any wind farms in China because they just don't work. China is the #1 producer of wind energy in the world, and it's not even close. Regarding wind energy specifically, he says all green is all bankruptcy. I don't know what that means. In the middle of this bitching about climate change, he goes on a weird tangent to say that DC was the murder capital of the US and now it's the safest city in the whole country. And then he says that all of that got accomplished in just 12 days and now people are going out to restaurants again. And he invites these other leaders to come and have dinner with him at a local restaurant in DC. And he says, we won't need armored vehicles. We can just walk there. Back to renewables and climate change, he says that there's a bunch of oil in the North Sea. They just haven't found it yet. And then to prove the point that he only hates wind energy so much because of his golf course in Scotland, he says that the beautiful countrysides of Scotland and England are being destroyed by wind farms going up. He claims in the 1920s and 1930s it was actually global cooling that they were worried about, and now it's changed to global warming. But then he says that sometimes it gets colder, and so now they just call it climate change. All that really is just the updating of a definition because it is more extreme climate extremes that are happening in both directions, causing things like worse hurricanes, but also worse blizzards. So you have to actually update the term to make more sense with what we're actually seeing, which is climate change. But overall, yes, the Earth is getting hotter every single year. He says that climate change is the greatest con job to ever happen to the world, and then he says that the carbon footprint is a hoax. The carbon footprint is just an idea of how much carbon do you use compared to others who are also outputting carbon. It's not it's just an idea. He does not understand the basic concepts of this. He talks about his greatly selling hat, the Trump was right about everything hat, and then claims that he was right about everything, except I guess being able to end the war in Ukraine in one day and being able to persecute all of his political enemies and being able to get the cost of groceries and gas down, being able to reduce the cost of energy in 12 months by 50%. So yeah, as he's just lying in front of all of these representatives to world leaders, he's just saying that he was correct about everything. This is just, if you know anything about currents and how big the Pacific is, this is really hilarious. He says that Asia, not a specific country, Asia dumps most of their garbage directly in the ocean. And then in 1 to 2 weeks, it's floating past LA and San Francisco. Does he know how big does he know what currents are? No, he doesn't know what any of those things are. He says again, you're not allowed to say coal without saying it's clean, beautiful coal, and then says that we have more oil than any country in the world. Just a reminder, here are countries who have larger oil reserves than the United States has. Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, UAE, Iran, Kuwait, Iraq, Russia, and Canada all have more oil reserves than the United States. He says that Brazil is being tariffed because they're censoring American free speech. I don't know how that is. I'm doing all the free speeches right now. He also says that as president, he will always defend the rights of American citizens. Unless you're a woman, disabled, queer, black, brown, trans, as long as you're not part of one of those groups, your rights will be definitely protected. And then to sum it all up, he says that Christianity is the most persecuted religion in the entire world. They just always have to be a victim because they are such betas. I honestly wasn't sure I'd get that all done in 10 minutes, but since I did, there's a possibility I will watch the autism speech thing today and also report on that. But I do have some people to thank. This person says, my son is a history/international relations major at university right now, so I've ordered copies of both of these books for him as well from Amanda. They sent me The Spy and the Traitor, and one day everyone will have been against this. They also said to me, I honestly don't know how you watch/read all of this without going insane, but I'm thankful that you can. For the rest of us who can't, thank you. You provide a way for us to stay informed. Also from Amanda, thank you for the books, Amanda. This person says, being a refugee from the Soviet Union obviously meant I had to get you this book. Thank you for the hard work you do. Absolutely love watching videos. That book is about Stalin. 1 second. Okay, that book is called The Court of the Red Tsar. This person says, his life was inspiring and enjoy the read and the new addition to your book sale from Tammy S. They sent me the book Einstein by Walter Isaacson. And finally, I'm proud to be one of your 10%. Thanks for your commitment to keeping us informed. Happy reading from Linda C, aka catlady_. Linda, they sent the book Against All Odds. Thank you guys again for all the gifts. Someone also sent me the smoking gun, but it just came in the box and there was no note attached to it. So if that was you, feel free to DM me. I would like to thank you for that, but I do really appreciate you guys hanging out. And since this was under 10 minutes, you might get the autism one from me today. I don't have any promises to you, but this is about to end because we're about to